KindaSound Radio. We're tuning in for change.
Hey guys, it's the KindaSound astrology update for the week. We're going from the Friday the 8th to Thursday the 14th of December for your astrology update this week. I'm so excited about sharing this week's astrology. It's a big week in astrology this week, and I often say that because there's always lots going on in the cosmos, but it's a big week. So we do a weekly update every Friday at 10. It's replayed the following day, this Saturday at 10. Available as a podcast on Tuesdays with Apple, Spotify, and of course with the KindaSound radio via the website. There you can access it there too. So let's get into it. So we had Venus go into Scorpio on the 6th, which I mentioned last week. So that's just happened. And in Scorpio, Venus is really getting into the nitty-gritty of relationships, getting deep, getting maybe sometimes a little bit mysterious, as we said last week. But what's really beautiful, one of the big cosmic influences this week is that Venus is actually going into opposition. So she's in Scorpio, as we said, and she's going into opposition with Jupiter on the 9th. This is really special because Jupiter's a big, expansive planet that's all about optimism and adventures and joy. So with that kind of more dark, suppressive sometimes energy, and perhaps wading through some of the depths that Scorpio can do, we've got a real lift to matters of love and beauty and relationships on the 9th. It's a great day for, sort of big romantic gestures, maybe a bit more romantic flair, bringing in the energies of those kind of feels into your day and into your relationship on the 9th. And then I can't not go any further in discussing this week without discussing the new moon on the 12th. So we have the new moon in Sagittarius on the 12th. Now, new moons generally are a great time to celebrate the new lunar month ahead, the beginning of the new moon month, and think about intention setting. Now, for me, intention setting is great, and we can do this on any day. You know, we have that power, we have our free will, and we can put in what we want and co-create with the universe at any time. But for me, new moons give us a really good opportunity to do that for the month ahead and beyond. But of course, things don't just land in our laps. So for me, when you're setting your intentions, it's really, really powerful to be the energy as well that you're wanting to bring in. When we think and we hear different things about manifestations, we're not just writing something down on a piece of paper, although I think that is a great start. But we're looking at being the energy that we want to bring in with any kind of manifestation. So the new moon on the 12th gives us a really lovely opportunity to do that. And of course, not just being the energy that you want to bring in, but actually making steps on actions to get to there, to get to what it is you're wanting to bring in. Because, you know, the universe takes us so far, and sometimes it does make things land in our laps, but actually without our participation and input, we're active players in it too, in this dance of co-creation with the cosmos. So on the 12th, a great time to set those intentions, write them down, get them clear, but also be looking at what action steps you can take and what energy you can adopt to really bring it in. Now, Sag new moon, this is a particularly interesting one for thinking about bringing in the practical steps, because Sag, as we discussed last week with the sun being still in Sag and last week going into Sag, we have a fiery, adventurous energy. It's big, it's expansive, it's optimistic. It sometimes doesn't think about the grounded approach. So it's really good with a new moon in Sag to get big, dream big, think really creatively about what you're wanting to bring in, and the sky's the limit with Sag. And we want to absolutely adopt that beautiful energy. It's intuitive, it goes upwards, it's really broad reaching and the bigger picture. So it will certainly give us a push to dream big, but without the practical steps of bringing in, the grounded action and the things that we need to actually do to make those kind of big dreams a reality. We want to adopt a little bit of practicality. So my invitation is, dream big always, absolutely, but how can we actually make those achievements tangible as well? So that's a really lovely energy on the 12th. We've also got the following day, Mercury retrograde. Now, Mercury retrograde gets a really bad rep sometimes, I think, when we're perhaps just looking on a more surface level with some of these planetary alignments. But actually, Mercury retrograde, it's a really fascinating time. And what we have is Mercury is known as, yes, he's known as the trickster of the cosmos. So, there can be some funny mishaps sometimes when it comes to Mercury retrograde. He is also deemed as the messenger of the gods. So generally, he's the communicator. He brings the messages. When he's in retrograde, which starts on the 13th, it's known, it's the planet starting to move backwards, and so we have this sense of sometimes delays, sometimes travel plans might not work out how we'd hoped, sometimes there might be tech difficulties, because Mercury, as I was saying, is about communication. So when we're putting the messages out there, we might notice tech kind of jams going on, we might notice things taking ages to buffer, all of that kind of stuff, things freezing, things shutting down. And occasionally that can be the case. But when we look a little bit deeper with Mercury retrograde, it's actually a really, really good opportunity, because with retrograde, it's always a more inward experience. So although we may have those external circumstances that pop up, he's the trickster, as we were saying, things can sometimes go a little bit awry. What we actually do have as the opportunity to utilize is like an inward journey, really, on our own communication. So it's definitely a really good time for slowing down, thinking a bit more about inward, how you're doing in your inward world. Certainly in the run up to Christmas, this is a really good opportunity to take, a little bit of heed and a little bit of internal dialogue at the forefront of what is it I'm needing, what's my body trying to tell me? Those are really good questions to be asking in a Mercury retrograde. So from the 13th, so you've got, this is all amplified by the new moon and the Mercury retrograde being so close together, on the new moon going exact on the evening of the 12th, and then the following day Mercury stationing retrograde. So we've got those two kind of amplifying each other, and so it'd be a really good time to utilize the energy of those intention settings as part of those as well. Somewhere in your list, perhaps having a check-in with yourself, like, how am I doing, what am I needing, and where am I in all this? And I know Kate, one of the other presenters, has been talking about wintering, and that's really interesting. It's a really good time astrologically as well, with the Mercury retrograde, to think about, actually the seasonal wheel of the year traditionally here is slowing down. We're wanting to, go at a slower pace, and that's really, really fitting with Mercury retrograde. So don't fear Mercury retrograde. It does sometimes get a bit of a bad reputation, but actually it's a really interesting time for going within. And again, if we're linking going within with the messenger side of Mercury, it's a good time as well to be checking in with our intuition, which might be more heightened, our psychic faculties, which again might be more heightened. If you're thinking about those messages and the inward time of the retrograde period, it's a great time for getting deeper with yourself. And that planet Mercury will be retrograde until the 1st of January. So we have that sort of nearly 3-week period where it's just under 3-week period, just over 2 weeks, where it's a good time for those things. So that's a good one. Enjoy the Mercury retrograde. We've also got a topic today that we're going to cover, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the moon. So in a moment, we're going to have a song. I've chosen Hymn to Her by the Pretenders, because the moon topic that we're covering today is the moon is a feminine placement. We discussed the sun last week, and that's a masculine energy. That's our vitality, our life force. In contrast, the moon is very much our feminine essence and our subconscious. And we're going to touch on that a little bit more. But the song Hymn to Her, to me, is a really feminine song representing the kind of stages of the feminine cycle. She talks about the maiden, the mother, the crone, and to me it's really moon-esque, because we have, you know, the phases of the moon. Quite evidently we're impacted by them, and I think it's a really good song to match that. You won't hear it on the podcast, but you'll hear it live. So thank you, Django, behind the scenes, for playing that on for us now.
KindaSound Radio, the station for a global community.
Hey guys, so we're back. So it's me, Stella Grace, with the astrology update show for the week ahead from the 8th to the 14th of December. And we've been discussing the new moon coming up on the 12th in Sag. So we love a new moon for setting intentions, bringing in our manifestations. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth actually about the moon now. So as I mentioned earlier, the moon is the feminine aspect, or one of the feminine aspects in the zodiac, and it can often indicate in the chart a link to your mother. And it can give an indication, depending on where it is in your chart, about the mother in your life and the mother within you, as we all have those aspects within us. So the moon, in contrast to the sun, is more intuitive, it's more cyclical. We think about how it impacts on the tides, and we have a really good indication of how it impacts on us. If we think it makes, you know, we notice it makes a high tide extra high, there's that fruition, there's that fullness. It's like a ripeness with a full moon. You can see how impacted the water is by that, so we can understand how it impacts us. And the moon, being more feminine in its nature, is, you know, it can be more reactive. There can be a heightened emotions, which is, you know, completely just for the difference between feminine and masculine attributes. Masculine is more doing, feminine is more being. And so with the moon, we've got sometimes this sort of more changeable nature, it can be sort of, it can heighten our emotions with the moon. It's also often our subconscious reactions. So I'll give you an example. My moon is actually in Sagittarius, so I'm maybe a little bit biased because we've got the new moon on the 12th in Sag. And, you know, for the most part, moon in Sag is really adventurous, and, you know, it loves travel and exploring and philosophy and wisdom. It's a bigger picture. But it can also want to sort of jet out and leave, or it can want to sort of, you know, go when things get tough, or the default mode that we see with moon and Sag can often be, you know, it's not a grounded moon. So that's an example of the moon in Sag. But where the moon is in our chart, if you know your moon sign, it's really interesting, because those are the traits that we will tend to lean towards as a default mode when something crops up and we might be more in a place of reaction rather than responding. I mean, ideally, of course, we're all always responding rather than reacting, but unfortunately life's not always like that, is it? And we have our triggers, and we have our tricky days here and there, or, you know, life events that can stir us. And so the moon in our chart is often a reflection of how we will be stirred, of how we will behave when we have, you know, more of our subconscious at play than our conscious. And of course, astrology, one of the things I love about it is when you know your chart and you know a few little bits about astrology, you can start to see them and recognize them as they come up, and ideally, you know, again, use them to our advantage to utilize. So, you know, giving you that example of my moon in Sag, it's really important for me to stay grounded. You know, we talk about nature and mindfulness a lot, but with fire planets, you know, it's absolutely imperative to still be keeping the feet on the ground, still be accessing the, you know, the calming essence of nature for me. And I'm sure many of you will resonate with that, no matter what your planets are. But it's interesting to think about these kind of things. So the moon is a point in our charts where we're also it's a strong influence for us. You know, we have that dance between our masculine and feminine, as I was saying, all the time, and the moon is really about how we tick underneath it all, really, in contrast to the sun. The life force is our vitality. It's how we show up in the world. It's, you know, who we've come here to be is the sun, but the moon is kind of like more our underplaying subconscious drives and workings. And so we have that interesting nugget of wisdom if we can get into the depths of our own chart a little more. So it's really interesting stuff. And enjoy the new moon on the 12th, the Mercury retrograde the next day. Again, you know, we might want to think about going within and listening to those inner workings and processes a little more than we perhaps might have been in the busy period. So take all that with love, and I will really look forward to seeing you or hearing from you as well next Friday at 10. I've also got another show coming up today that I'm super excited for. So at 11, I'll have the lovely Anne Kelly with me, and we'll be talking about ancient teachings for a modern world. And I'm really absolutely excited and fascinated to hear her amazing wisdom today live at 11. So I hope you'll join us for that as well. I'm really looking forward to it. And I will see you next week. Much love.